Prose is like the opposite of poetry.
Huh. Oh. Yeah. We can current that, and that wasn't like within the jurisdiction of the district, so we could talk about it outside of the
Yeah, there
meeting.
you go.
Yeah. But being that it is 6 o'clock, I am gonna call to order the regular session of the Board of Commissioners of the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Norton,
Present.
Commissioner Benson, Commissioner Dale,
Here.
Commissioner Newman,
Here.
and President Coleman.
Present. Probably on with the lack of better judgment prior to going to the Pledge of Allegiance, I wanted to say something because Pledge of Allegiance is something that I've struggled with, admittedly. I'm speaking personally, not on behalf of the district, with the idea of pledging allegiance to a symbol and so many people ignoring the actual meaning behind it, and the things that this country is meant to stand on. And with what's been going on recently in the news, whatever, I'm not trying to be partisan about anything, but I think unity and allegiance to the actual words of like liberty and justice are really important right now. So more important than any just like specific symbol. But with that, just wanting to say that and feeling like the way that the country has been divided and just with some of the actions that have been happening, including today, is really troubling, that I'd like you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Want to start us out, Greg?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
He's gonna get his justice. So do we have a report on closed session?
No reportable action tonight.
All right, then we will move on to public comment. This portion of the agenda allows the public to speak to the board on various issues not itemized on this agenda. A member of the public may also request that a matter appearing on the consent calendar, which is coming next, may be pulled and discussed separately. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the board may not take any action on any item that does not appear on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to speak for a period of up to 3 minutes regarding each item on the agenda when that item comes up. And each speaker is limited to speak for a period of 3 minutes during the public comment portion of the agenda regarding items of special interest to the public but are not appearing on the agenda that are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners. Would anyone care to make public comment tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. There's 2 items: adopting minutes for the May 8th regular board meeting and receiving district financial reports.
So move. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? The consent calendar passes. Communication, reports, and correspondence received. Any correspondence?
Yes, I received an email from Mike Wilson. Mike Wilson is the supervisor for District 3 for the County of Humboldt. Mike brought to our attention AB 770, which is provided a legal and environmental analysis. AB 770 is a proposed addition of section 5208.3 to the Business Professions Code. It talks specifically about expanding the opportunities for maintenance of billboards. And because it is not in keeping with the billboard ordinance and what is adopted by the Harbor District, staff is going to dedicate some time to better understanding this. Very likely writing a letter in opposition because it's not in keeping with the direction we have to manage billboards. Mr. Wilson wasn't able to be here tonight. This came in a little bit late, so I just want to let you know that staff will be taking appropriate action. If we need to bring it to the board for any direction, we will do that as well.
All right, thank you. Executive Director's report.
Yeah, doing my best here. As you've all seen, we're minus a screen tonight. We had technical difficulties at the very last minute, so
But we do have public on online
Yes.
tonight? Okay. I did neglect to say if you wanted to speak during any of the comment periods, you can use the raise hand feature on Zoom or *9 on your phone. Sorry, forgot that part.
So I don't know if my clicker's working or if that's Mindy.
That's it, you moved it back.
It should work too now.
Let's see what we got here. Perfect, there we go. So for me, it's really been a month of a number of meetings. We had a 2x2 at the city of Eureka the other day. And then a couple of things that came up in that meeting that I think are really important to note. City of Eureka is preparing to dredge next year. So we're working very cooperatively with the city of Eureka to dredge the Eureka Small Boat Basin and some near shore tide dredging. Also, they have other facilities that are adjacent to tideland, commercial street dock, etc. We've approached Chevron, the U.S. Coast Guard, and ourselves to look who might be dredging next year, maintenance dredging. It would be an ideal time because a few of us are ready to dredge again, and that would be a very large number to reduce mobilization and demobilization costs. As you know, we have one fairway between D and E docks that needs some servicing, a portion between C and D, and then the far inner reaches of G and H to H and I. We are still waiting for FEMA. Our dredge fund is in the negative because remember, we borrowed funds to dredge. But if we get our FEMA reimbursement and there continues to be sporadic activity there, that would give us funds eligible to dredge and replenish the monies we've spent to date. So I'm very happy with that. We also talked about continuing our MOU in regard to cruise ships. So we're going to renew our MOU for another term and continue to market cruise ships. In addition to that, for those of you that are unaware, there's a challenge right now with fueling here in Humboldt Bay because England Marine has moved into a new facility. The facility they were leasing, the fuel that they sell there, those tanks no longer are compliant and they're going to have to be upgraded. And so as part of that process, we're working through that. Nothing has happened to date, but the city has assured us that they will have a plan. They have a plan that is implementing, migrating through on that and should have stuff installed in the spring of next year. This is critically important because we don't want dockside fueling occurring in the waters of Humboldt Bay, although Renner Petroleum is outfitted with the appropriate credentials to do so, and they have done it previously. In terms of the Humboldt dockside market, I'll show you some pictures in a moment, but I want to make sure that everybody's aware this past Saturday, the first Humboldt dockside market occurred down at Medica Plaza. Fish sold out nearly instantly. It was pretty exciting. There was fresh poke bowls available. There's a clothing vendor that has a nautical theme. And then there was the fishing vessel Corregidor selling. This is in addition to dockside sales, which occur here at Woodley Island. But big shout out to Megan and Ashley, who really worked tirelessly on this, as well as Harrison Ibach, who is the current president of that. And I believe, Commissioner, you're on the board of Humboldt Fishermen's Marketing Association. They're an active participant and partner in this greater piece. Pacific Offshore Wind Conference, a number of us were there recently and had the opportunity to participate. It was good to hear that people are still very bullish on wind here in California. While there certainly has been some milestone changes with the federal administration and costs related to producing this, it's definitely something that has, there's energy out there. Frankly, the conference could have been a bit more exciting, some of the topics and speakers, but overall, there's people that are still very bullish on wind, and so happy to report that. Wind energy developers, we've met with both R2B and Vineyard are local people. Thought I had an additional note on that, but I don't. But they're both very engaged on Humboldt, and I especially want to drive that fact home because there's been a lot of media that R2B has pulled out of the market. They have not pulled out of the market. They're absolutely maintaining their West Coast lease value. Most notably, Andrew Meredith has been promoted to the lead on California offshore wind. Andrew comes from the California State Building Trades. He was the lead prior to President Chris Hannon. And met with Andrew this morning. There's a lot of energy there. Spoke with Vineyard this afternoon. So they're very aggressive on continuing to move things forward. FKLS walks, or excuse me, FLKS walks. So this is Field Landing King Salmon. We're working with Cal Poly Humboldt and Sea Grant, facilitating for County of Humboldt. on flooding and other challenges, living down in Phil's Landing and King Salmon, mainly environmental challenges. The bulk of this is related to coastal flooding and the low elevations there. But on Saturday, we spent 3 hours in the community of Phil's Landing, talking with the community, doing a field walk. On Sunday, we did the same thing in King Salmon. Very well attended. And a number of issues came up, including the discovery of 2 sunken vessels, which Deputy Norton, the Marine Deputy from the Sheriff's Office, and myself are actively working on. There's a number of other issues, but really great engagement and good communications occurring. So I appreciate team working on that. Rob and I have engaged with them online a couple of times now, and there'll be a lot more work to come. This is stage 1 of a big, long process. It's nice that we have these invitations forthcoming now from our other agencies, because we've really put a high level of focus on engagement. Army Corps nearshore placement demonstration project is now complete. All of the summaries are not up and available yet. My goal is to have Savannah Fanning, who offices next door, she was the project lead and manager on that, come present to us potentially as early as next month. But we did do nearshore placement of dredge material to help not only the demonstration project for beneficial reuse, but also help to build a coastal line and beaches. So very pleased with that. The ACOE 2025 dredge schedule. So we've gone through this a couple of meetings. You'll notice a check mark there. The SEONs came in and did federal dredge channel work, as well as a couple of knockdowns in the barn entrance in preparation for the SEONs. The SEONs work is now complete. They've departed, and those surveys should have landed on the website tonight. And then finally, Manson is here presently dredging for the West Coast Dredge Hopper contract. So with all things said, we should have over 1 million cubic yards out of the barn entrance and the channels here in Humboldt Bay. We had an absolute full press dredge season this year. I'm very happy that's happening there. One thing I'm going to note, we get way more dredging from the Corps of Engineers than we provide maritime commerce. We have an exceptional relationship with the Corps. They put a giant amount of investment in Humboldt Bay. They want to maintain that. We're doing everything we can to increase ship traffic. But there are other EDs I'm talking to, Redwood City and other ports, that are curious how we're getting such high level of funding. But has to do with the navigation here, the aggressiveness in our coastline, and the commitment to rebuilding our jetties. So very grateful for the work of our predecessors and our current team in keeping exceptional relationships with the Army Corps of Engineers. They engaged with Rob and I and the heavy lift Marine terminal team that Rob's leading very regularly. And they've been very supportive of our intention to use material for beach placement, that's barn entrance material, to cover our outfall line, either in the 26 or 27 dredge. So that's just a stock photo of the Manson dredge, but if you see that vessel out in the water and you're wondering what the heck's going on, that's Manson's Bayport dredge. Couple of quick photos. This is Tony Burris of the fishing vessel Corregidor, selling live crab at the inaugural dockside market this past Saturday. I was there at 9 a.m. like I was supposed to be, and apparently they cut the ribbon at 10 or 11 because I missed out on the ribbon cutting. This is Josh Auckland and his team, his family. They have Arcata Pizza and Deli. They operate the fishing vessel Market 8 here at Woodley Island. They are the big local restaurant that catches and sells in their restaurant. They had poke bowls, and their partners in the background, the fellow off to the left is Harrison Ibach, president of Humboldt Fishermen's Market Association, and one of the fellow fishermen. This is Ashley Bellis, Megan Kelly, and their team member in there, and that's the mobile cutting station for fish. And that was the first purchased fish that was being cut to take home. So kind of exciting stuff. A lot of good things happening, and really happy to be able to participate in that. So it's my report.
Yeah.
I don't have anything until we get to the project, then you'll hear from me.
All right. District Council is not here. District Treasurer.
She'll be reporting on the audit.
Okay.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Do we have a District Engineer?
Slide. Okay. Just a quick update on a few items we've been working on. We've been coordinating Phil's Landing Boatyard. One is just staying in compliance with our industrial general permit, so doing our monthly inspections. We finalized our SWIP amendment number 5 for that. And then we're doing some pre-construction activities, trying to coordinate for the construction. So working with district staff, checking on groundwater levels and all that for, we're going to require over excavation for this buried tanks. What's the next item here? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you just went through these. And then RMT2 outfall line. So again, I think part of with the near shore placement is helpful in terms of building sediment and sand off the shore. But we're looking at permitting onshore placement. So starting to do outreach to some of the other agencies that we're going to be permitting with. And again, coordinating some upcoming meetings with other agencies. And we're beginning our kind of draft scope and cost estimate for what that effort's going to take. So we're kind of scoping out what that's going to be and work in conjunction with, I think Army Corps will be a big partner that we're trying to coordinate with. And then finally, Shelter Cove, still trying to deal with our emergency repairs to the access road and also to the jetty that was destroyed from previous winter storms. So achieved another hurdle. At least we are agreeing on a statement of work for the boat launch. You know, we're still trying to get funds for that. So again, it's like a very slow ongoing process. I think with everything with FEMA, there's a lot on their end. So any hurdle is an achievement. And that's really it for me. Any questions?
It is good to note that our Cal OES representative who helps us with FEMA, Michael, who was slated to go, has agreed to stay on a bit longer, and he was headed off to retirement. He's been a wonderful advocate for us and has helped us to push these projects forward. So I'm very happy that he's sticking around. I hope it's more than just 90 days. But Mike's team, Natalie McLaughlin and Scott Perkins, have been very instrumental on that. And we've reached, as Mike said, some really good milestones recently. So happy that he was able to report that, but it looks like we will have potentially some money for Shelter Cove very soon. Remember, we applied in 22.
Yeah.
We've spent an inordinate amount of money to get this far, but we need it. So
Thanks for sticking with that. Takes money to get money, I guess. District planner, what do you have for us tonight?
I don't have anything.
You'll be addressing later too. All right, thank you. Moving on to commissioner and committee reports. Who would like to go first?
I'll start. I just, we had a little bit of some meetings with the budget earlier in the week. And then last month, Aaron and I, we attended the offshore wind conference with Chris and Rob. It was a good learning experience and also just a good time traveling down and talking with the guys and learning a little more about them personally. So it was a good experience for me. Also, that there was somewhat alarming. That's one of the things I talked to Chris about and Aaron on the way back was just that one of the engineers from our partner in Long Beach kind of expressed that they were going to be developing their wind terminal faster than here, and they would be able to ship their windmills or whatever, the towers and all the way up here, and before we got in a position to build it ourselves or assemble those here ourselves. So that was somewhat alarming, and just with the where the state budget is and competing factors for limited financial resources. So I know we're as a team trying to do everything we can to advocate for our project here. And that's probably the biggest thing that I walked away with from there. And then we also had a little bit of meeting this week with the first meeting with the Green Terminal Advisory Committee. And most of the participants on the committee did attend. There's still, unfortunately, some members of the community haven't been represented yet. It's not that the Harbor District hasn't reached out. It's just lack of ability for them, I guess, for resources to attend. But that's all I got to report.
Good, Jack. Aaron?
Well, ditto to what Jack said about the wind conference, learned a lot, and it was great to see the enthusiasm that exists still for the project off the coast of California. I also attended the 2x2 meeting with the Executive Director Mickelson about was that last week, I guess? And I think our relationship with the city of Eureka is very good on a lot of the issues we talked about. Really glad to see the dredge working. I mean, what makes this fleet safe? We got one of the most dangerous bars on the West Coast, and the more dredging we get, the safer we're going to be. And it's just great to see the dredges working, different dredges working, but as long as they're getting the material out of there, we're happy. Glad to see that the dockside market went well. As far as the fishing seasons, crab's about to end. It might end a little prematurely because of the possibility of whale entanglements. And the other fisheries don't look that great. There's no salmon again for the third year in a row commercially in California. And the other markets are sort of depressed and the quotas are up, and it seems as though management's a little behind, but maybe they'll catch up and we'll do well. I don't know. That's it for me.
I don't have much to report. I was absent last month and I apologize for that, but it was we went to Europe, my family and I, and got to see some windmills while we were there. It's amazing how many windmills are going up and around, and business. It's surprising how many windmills, how much wind is offshore. Anyways, I don't have anything else to report.
Thank you. Let's see, I was also at the offshore wind conference and got a lot out of that. It was good to hear what's going on and seeing the old gang getting together and hopefully trying to get a few things done, and people are moving on. And I do hope and trust our relationship with Long Beach will continue to be a cooperative one instead of strict competition, but I think that's going through. Missed the dockside fish market. I was planning on going to that, but went out fishing instead. And the result of that was I should have stayed home and bought fish from the fish market. But yeah, it'll be that. But I did see the hook and line booth. They were at the Friday night market before then, and they had some really delicious ceviche. So look forward to that again. Attended a few subcommittee meetings and advisory meetings, including the fisheries sub with Commissioner Newman, and the Green Terminal inaugural one with Commissioner Norton. So both those were great. I commend staff on the volume and quality of community outreach that we're doing for this project. I really believe that what we're doing can be a model for like just community engagement and development. I am not sure that if everyone really appreciates how much above and beyond we're going to, like, our staff is going to engage with the community and try and meet and address concerns and with various stakeholders, tribes, governments, agencies, and what have you. So appreciate that. And yeah, I don't think I have, is it June 28th, the end of this month, is the ribbon cutting for the extension of the trail from Arcata to Eureka, which is very exciting, and could be, recreation is in our name, so I think that's a big component of that. And as a occasional bike commuter, I'm looking forward to not riding as much through the safety corridor, or not riding on the highway in the safety corridor and on the trail. So looking forward to that. Thanks. So moving on to unfinished business. Let's receive a status update regarding the Humboldt Bay Offshore Wind Heavy Lift Marine Terminal project.
All right. So just a quick update on engagement. A couple of our commissioners mentioned this already. Green Terminal Committee met for the first time, so it's great to start making progress on that. The technical analysis is underway. Pretty excited about the content that will be coming to you. Community Advisory Committee, very active at this point, a lot going on there. Aquaculture Committee is in the process of reviewing some preliminary partial drafts of multiple technical studies, so hundreds of pages of content that they're working on. Fishing Committee had a very productive meeting last week. They're waiting on the tow out simulations, which you heard about last month. Town of Samoa, we are now meeting in the Women's Club in the Town of Samoa, as well as the Villas Rex townhomes. So we're going back and forth between those two. And then, as you know, the community there self-selected a steering committee, which we just had breakfast with on yesterday. And there's a new round of meetings with tribes coming up. As you know, we have technical speakers now in these presentations. This is the schedule. A lot of speakers. I think there's 52 different individuals over the period of time. And tonight is the Upland theme. So we've got Josh Singer out of the Boston Moffitt Nickel office, Raj, Jeremy, and Aaron Porter in that order, I think. So I guess Mindy, it's your magic.
Who's first?
Josh Singer.
Yep, that's me.
You're gonna have sore necks at the end. We don't have any travel pillows for you.
Can you hear us, Josh?
Yep, I got you. You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, I'll share my screen.
Slides for you. Mindy, could you click on the screen?
Oh, it says you're not allowing sharing. You got to allow sharing.
You don't need to share, 'cause you're doing slides.
I can do your slides for you, or you can share if you want.
Yeah, it said like when I go to share, it says the host isn't allowing sharing for this meeting.
Oh, I have it here already.
Do you want to advance your own slides, Josh?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. So when I click on share, it says the host isn't allowing sharing for this meeting.
Okay, hang in there for just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, you should be a go now.
All right. Yep. Stuff.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Let me get rid of this thing too. All right, here we go. All right, so yep, I'm based in Boston. I run the offshore wind team for Moffitt and Nickel. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the design drivers for the terminal, and then operations at the terminal. Uh-oh. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in like at the most basic level, what we're doing in Humboldt is we are, or for any offshore wind terminal, we are taking all of the gigantic stuff that comes from the manufacturing fabrication facilities. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving here, but the three things on the left side here, those are the WTG components, the wind turbine generation components, the tower sections, the nacelle, and the blades. And then we also take the foundations and the anchors and the chains that hold the floating units into the port. We do the magic that we do with the port, and then we spit out the output, which is a floating turbine unit, right? That gets towed out from the port. All right, so in order to do that, there's different drivers, like, there's a lot of questions. Why is the port so big? Why does it have to hold so much capacity? This is basically the drivers that go into the design process to tell us what the port needs to do. So these are the components. This is for the 15 to 20 megawatt unit. Right now, have started to install some 15s, but for floating, it looks like it will be a minimum of 20. There's a couple of things. There's basically 3 things that cause us that are the main drivers for the terminal design. There's the nacelle, and that's the load of the nacelle, which is about 1,200 tons, which is quite significant. That's the load problem that we've got, or the load puzzle that we need to solve. There's the geometry puzzle that we need to solve, which is the blades. So those can be about 400 to 425 feet long. So they don't necessarily weigh a lot, but getting them in and out of the terminal is quite difficult to move them on the terminal. We have the tower sections, which kind of falls within all the other ones, and then the foundations. Those are the big beasts, right? You got to be able to support the fully built foundation, which can be up to like 6,000 tons. Okay. Then the equipment that moves the stuff around the yard. Everything that moves in the yard is going to be on these things called SPMT, self-propelled modular transporters. You can see the foundation here. A fully assembled foundation is up on one. SPMTs here. A lot of the lifting and inside the terminal, specifically for the build of the foundation, is going to happen with basically the world's largest crawler cranes. Like an example would be this Liebherr 13,000. And then to do the staging, to do the integration of the WTG components onto the foundation, it's very likely to be a ring crane, right? And those are actually the biggest cranes in the world that'll be doing that. So and the pressure underneath these things is basically what drives a lot of the loading, right? So we've got about 3,000 under the SPMT, and then you can get up to 15,000 under the crawler, where a lot of load spreading happens, and about 5,000 PSF under the ring crane. All right, then the vessels coming in and out. The components are delivered on like large cargo carriers. You have the WTG components. This one's got blades on it. They're about 600 feet with a 40-foot draft. But once we start to take in this is fixed bottom foundations, but like the floating foundation parts and pieces will come on a big flat back that cargo vessel like this. That could be up to like 750 feet. Then we've got the semi-submersible barge I'll show you how that works in a sec, but that basically takes the foundations off the deck onto the semi-submersible, and then you sink the semi-submersible and the foundations go buoyant. So that's the transfer from the deck to the water. Those are about 550. They're all very, very large vessels. And then the anchor handler is the tug, or the vessel that tows it out to the installation site. So if we look at that, like what we're doing and when things happen, we're taking in the components into the terminal, right? So like we just looked at, we have the WCG components and the foundation components. The parts of the foundations will come into the terminal. They'll get staged in the terminal, in the storage areas, and you put in a significant amount of these as supply chain risk reduction. So you dump a lot into the terminal so that if something goes wrong with the input, you still have inventory to work from. You're going to be assembling the foundations on the deck of the terminal, right? So you take these pieces and we're assembling them. You're not forging any steel or anything, but you are like bolting different pieces of the foundation together. Then the foundation gets completed right up at the face of the wharf, and it gets rolled by SPMTs onto that semi-sub that we saw, right? So it rolls out here. The semi-sub goes out into the sinking basin and sinks, and then the foundation floats off the top of it. Once you've got that, the foundation then gets pulled back to the berth, and you use that giant ring crane to assemble the components onto the foundation. Once you've got that, you could either tow it right out to the site, or you have to put it into wet storage. It goes into wet storage if the weather thresholds if the weather is beyond the allowable thresholds. That's typically the significant wave height or the wind. If those are too high and you can't get it towed out, that's what wet storage does, right? So you keep those in wet storage. When the thresholds, when the weather or the significant wave height and the wind drops below the thresholds, the tugs hook up to them and tow them out. And that's what this is here, showing the tugs towing it out. And all of that adds up to the terminal that we've got designed for Humboldt, right? So we've got about 3,500 feet of wharf, 6,000 PSF capacity at the wharf, 180 acres of upland at 3,000 PSF, and about a 40-foot, not about a 40-foot draft at for the at the wharfs, right? For the various vessels and foundations. And you can see the different activities, right? These are the delivery berths. Here's delivery, bringing in the components. Here's the white stuff, the WTG in two different integration slots. And then the foundation components are over here in the foundation assembly yard. That's the staging. Then we're launching the foundation here. It's hard to see the barge here, but like this is basically once the foundation's finished, it rolls off onto a barge. It's going to go into wet storage in the bay somewhere near the terminal in an area here. Oh, so sorry, it gets integrated first, like at one of these two sites, right? So you'll integrate the white onto the foundation at one of these two sites, then it go into wet storage. And then when the weather is right, it will get towed out by the anchor handler and the harbor tugs into the harbor, right? So this is the fully developed terminal that you see here. And that's what I had for tonight. I don't know if you want to do questions, Rob, or you want to wait till the end.
Any questions or clarification from the board? Thank you. Yeah, we'll wait till the end and bring it out to the public for any questions on all the presentations.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We'll move to the next speaker, and then there might be questions for you after the four speakers. Next is Raj. Talking about ground improvements. How do you make the ground 3,000 pounds per square foot bearing capacity?
Okay. Good evening, all. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Advance them for you if you'd like.
yes, please. I have some problem with sharing my screen. So, Ashley, would you mind sharing it?
Perfect. Yeah. Can you see your first slide?
No, I don't see it.
Okay.
I think somebody with a laptop, if they share it, I may be able to see it. I was able to see Josh's slides.
Okay, for some reason, we're not going to be able to have you see the slides here, but if you have your own version there, it's identical, then I'll just make sure I advance it. So right now I'm on your title slide.
Okay. All right. So I have mine open on the side. So this site actually, just wanted to highlight, the geotechnical challenges of this site. So we have, just to keep it in a simple format, I mean, this site, the backland, Josh mentioned, that there'll be heavy loading that's going to go in the site. So we did the preliminary geotechnical evaluation and then found out, there is a thick, about approximately 70 feet thick compressible soil layers in the backland. So what it'll do is actually, if we don't improve it, when this big loading is applied for a long period, then it'll go through significant amount of settlement, making the backland not usable. The second thing is, the region is pretty, high seismic area, so we have a significant amount of ground shaking in this area. So there are three levels of design, earthquake levels that we use to design this terminal. So out of those, the design level earthquake is about 0.9 G. And then because of this high level of shaking, there is the soils are liquefiable, and also we have weak soils. So we could expect, large lateral slope movement. So if you go to the next slide, please.
Got it. The side profile.
Yes, so this is just to highlight. I mean, I don't want to go into the too much detail. This shows, all the soil exploration details in here. What I want you to focus on this one is to, see that red box there that shows compressible soils. They are up to about 70 feet thick. So there are various different type of exploration that we have done, and then we confirmed, it is variable at different locations, but in general, it's about 70 feet deep. So it highlights, that we do need to do some sort of a mitigation. So if you go to the next slide, please.
Raj, if I can interrupt you for a second, some of our viewers don't have quite the geotechnical background that you do. So for anyone that's not familiar with this graphic is showing, these are from geotechnical borings. So we went out to the site and drilled big holes in the ground and then tested the soil for various components that Raj's team needs to understand about how strong the soil is and what it's susceptible to. All right, Raj, I'm gonna jump to the next slide.
Yeah, no, so thank you for that. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that, we always look at the soil conditions, so we are kind of familiar with that one. So, there are different type of investigation that we have done. We have done the soil borings, we have done cone penetration testing, like we pushed some rod into the ground, and we got the subsurface conditions. So here, what you are seeing here is the soil profile, and then the what is highlighted in the red box is the weak soil area. So if you go to the next slide, please.
Got it.
So here, this one actually, this is an example of, a different type of one of the mitigation measures that can be done to mitigate this settlement issue. Basically, that is, since we have a fine-grained soil, the idea is to actually provide some sort of a drainage and then also put some loading on the top of it so that the soil can be squeezed, that water out, and then it'll become pretty stiff and it'll not go through any more settlement. So what you see here is actually, it's called wick drains. So it has a small 4-inch wide um, a plastic channel, and that is wrapped with the filter fabric. So it'll let this water go through that channel. So the uh, the photograph you see on the top left, top right, that's how they install these wick drains. So that rig actually take the wick drain that comes in the road, it push it into the ground all the way down to the bottom of the soft layer, and then when it pull out, actually the wick drain stays in the ground. Then you come back and then put the surcharge loading, depending on what kind of the future loading the site is going to see. We have to come up with the right thickness, the height of the surcharge. Then we monitor the settlement for a period of time. It could be about 9 months, 12 months, 16 months. So it all can be designed. So this is just an example of mitigating the settlement issue in the backland. Is that so? You want to have any questions, or you want to move to the next slides?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Okay. So this one, what I'm showing here is, the one of the preliminary analysis that we have done. So here we have done a slope stability analysis. We have put the different layers of soil, assigned the right soil parameters, the strength, and so on. And then when we run the analysis, what we are finding out is, because of the high level of intensity of shaking, the soil mass is actually moving into the water. So those reds circle, the red lines that we draw there, that shows, that's kind of the failure surface where the soil mass can go into the water. So this needs to be addressed. We need to do some sort of a mitigation. So the next slide, you can see here, the yellow one that I highlighted, the idea is to do some sort of a ground improvement, um, make this soil very strong in that area. So that way it provides some sort of a buffer so the failure doesn't happen all the way, extending into the backland. So if you go to the next slide.
Got it.
So this one, if you're in the sliding, in the presentation mode, actually, you may see only the first one. It's called cement deep soil mixing on your left side. So the top photograph basically shows, a mixing paddle. The idea is actually you inject cement grout into the ground. You go all the way down, mixing it, and then you come back and then mixing it. So basically, it's like a mixing the soil and the cement and create a column in the ground. And we keep doing that one, and the width that we needed and the depth that we needed, and then let the ground the column solidify to the strength that is required. So all those needs to be designed. And what you see on the bottom is one of the project that we have done, and they have done to increase the speed of the mixing. They have a three paddle rig, a big rig actually, that is mixing the soil with the cement slurry. And then if you click the enter button, you may see the photos on the right hand side. So this cement deep soil mixing, actually, it will work nicely and it's a little bit cheaper option. But if you shouldn't have any obstruction in the ground, because if the obstruction is there, obstruction means like any existing piles or rock or anything in the ground, then this mixing will not happen because the paddle might get stuck. So in that case, there is a similar method, but that's called jet grouting. What we do is we go into the ground, instead of using the mechanical mixing, we inject the grout at a very high pressure and let that pressure grout mix with the soil and then do that mixing action. It does create a little bit more spoils, but the nice thing about that one is it can actually go through rock and any existing obstruction. So in an area, when we identify the soil site has some obstruction, then we can switch between the CDSM to the jet grouting and get that improvement done in the area that we want. So those are the possible mitigation measures that we are looking into. That's all I have for now.
Yeah, that was great, Raj. Thank you.
Sure.
Again, check with the commissioners, any clarifying questions on this one? And I guess just with the public, are you fine waiting till the end for questions? So then why don't we move on to the next presentation? Thank you very much.
Next is Jeremy Patapop.
There we go. I was waiting for the unmute to turn on. Good evening, everyone. Let's see. Mine also says no sharing. So if you want to go ahead, if you've got them
I've got your
queued, yeah, queued up. We'll just start with the title. So I'm also with Moffitt and Nickel, and I'm the Southern California Civil and Drainage Practice Lead. And so I'm going to talk a few minutes about the stormwater collection and treatment of the site. As mentioned in the previous two presenters, site grades will end up changing, site topography, and also the permeability of the site as well. In the end, there's going to be a highly compacted, dense graded aggregate, which will end up acting like an impervious surface. So it'll be important to collect that stormwater and treat it prior to discharging out into the bay. Next slide, Rob.
Okay.
And the requirements of the Humboldt County require low impact development, or LID. The cover of the manual is there on the right hand side of the page. And the requirements require state particular means and methods to capture the stormwater and treat it. And it's not the stormwater in its entirety, but it's what they would call the first flush. And that can range anywhere from 6, 7, 8/10 of an inch to maybe the first inch of water. And that's really where the majority of any of your pollutants would come from. Sediments, oil drippings, stuff from the assemblies, stuff that may just happen to land out on the site. And the most basic way is you treat that through natural means or natural methods. As you can see, there's an example of a photo of some landscaping. Well, the landscaping not only has a somewhat of an aesthetic, it also has treatment properties that are built into it as the water filtrates from top to bottom. So you can, that last bullet talks about it promotes natural filtration and pollutants through the biological activity of the soil. Slide 3, please.
Got it.
So the question may be then, why is this needed? And Humboldt does have an LID stormwater manual, and you can see that there are boundaries shaded there. The project is not within one of the shaded boundaries. However, in discussions with the Regional Water Quality Control Board and review of post-construction permit, it's going to be the most prudent to follow the LID stormwater manual in just being good stewards, as well as even following the post-construction stormwater requirements here. We're going to end up in a very similar place in the end. On the left is just some quotes and excerpts from very large manuals. They're hundreds of pages. So obviously we won't bore you with that, but this is going to be considered a redevelopment project. It's definitely more than 1 acre, and it's removing and or replacing and increasing the amount of impervious surface that we're going to see out there on the project site. Slide 4, please.
Okay.
So what are some of the methods that are being used to achieve low impact development? And one of the things we're doing is, which was really good at the onset of the project, is trying to look at and incorporate these devices in the early planning and design stages, rather than trying to shoehorn them in later on. As you know, water flows downhill, and so the grading of the site, the slopes of the storm drains, all of those things come into play when we're looking at stormwater treatment and conveyance of stormwater from the surface to the outfall in the bay. And as mentioned before, this one says the 85th percentile, and that's that 0.6 to 1/10 of stormwater that would be treated at the beginning of any storm. After that, the remainder of the storm is considered clean, and I was doing air quotes, and that remainder of the stormwater is allowed to then freely discharge through the outfall. But it's that initial portion of the storm that we're targeting for the treatment. Slide 5, please.
Okay.
In the event that we won't be able to achieve certain areas of true low impact development, these are a few examples of proprietary or manual designed devices that we have used in other projects in California that also achieve the same pollutant removals that you would see in a bioplanter or biofiltration planter. The benefit of these is that these devices can be placed within the interior of the site. The planter boxes that you saw on the previous slides would be intended more for the perimeter of the site. That way we're not impeding movement of the components as they're being shuffled around the site. However, these are manhole lids and concrete box structures that allow the water to flow through them and won't impede the movement. So slide 6, what would be the next steps? We're currently completing the site grading model in order to direct the water in the most ideal locations for collection and treatment. So we're locating these collection points. We're looking at slopes and lengths of laterals and main lines and how many outfalls we'll have out to the bay. And then also on the water quality part, we're establishing a drainage boundary, which is more or less the tributary area to a particular spot. From there, we're calculating water quality volumes, how much volume do we have to treat, so that we can size these devices appropriately so that we're achieving those requirements that are set forth in the Humboldt County LID manual. And that's the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. I actually have a question. This is Stephen Coleman. What are the main like pollutant constituents that you're looking at needing to treat site through stormwater?
Sure. The tape requirements, which are established for this particular site, the biggie is always total suspended solids. It's your dust and dirt particles, that kind of stuff that's being distributed around the site. The tape enhanced also includes metals. So that's the second big constituent there is going to be removal of metals down to a certain ppm in order to hit that target. And both of the types of devices that I talked about today meet that requirement. They've passed the state of Washington tape testing procedures for those, and they have documentation supporting the removals of both suspended solids and metals, and hydrocarbons too. That's a basic.
Great, thank you for
Sure.
I have a question too.
yeah, go ahead, Greg.
This is Greg Dale, a member of the board as well. So the basin plan will require certain levels that are different than, say, an ocean disposal. And I know it's difficult to discharge to the ocean. We have a ocean outfall line. Would it be easier, cheaper, better to pipe these discharges to the ocean outfall versus discharging into the bay?
It could be. That's one topic that's come up in conversation before, and technically this isn't sewer water, and the volumes that you would be talking about are much greater than what you're even dealing with in a sewer line. Because once you go that direction, you not only have that first flush portion of your stormwater, you've also got you're up to your 100-year storm event, or whatever your largest storm event happens to be, would all have to pass through that there. And on the flip side of that, right now the site is naturally draining from west to east. So it's currently draining that direction too as well. So it's not that we're changing flow patterns or flow directions. There currently is an on-site drainage system that will be discarded just because of the age and condition of that, but it'll be maintaining those outflows that are currently there.
And you're saying you're going to collect every, not just first flush, but continuous collection.
Correct. It's continuous collection, and the first flush is treated, and then the thought behind that is, and the calculations behind those is the majority, 90-something% of your pollutants are in that first flush that's being treated, and after that, you're just discharging stormwater. It's just rainwater at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any further questions or clarifications? If not,
Okay,
moving on to is this our final?
final one is Aaron Porter regarding shoreline stabilization.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. If you have my slides up, I can just walk through those with you.
Yep, they're up and ready to go.
All right, maybe just off to slide number 2 before we can get started. So Aaron Porter, coastal engineer with Moffitt and Nickel. Today I'm going to give sort of an update on shoreline stabilization as it results to our current efforts, starting with a little bit of the what and where. What is, or we need to stabilize the new slopes, the new shoreline for the terminal, to protect against wind waves, vessel wakes, runoff, etc. We are going to have new site grades, and we'll have a new shoreline portions of that area that we want to protect against and maintain for the upland terminal there. And on the bottom left of this is an example of sort of some shoreline stabilization in a marine terminal. Maybe what ours will look like here, but just sort of want to give a picture of that for folks that might not be as familiar with what I mean when I say shoreline stabilization. So we have the revetment rock down below, and then up above where the waves will hit on this picture is vegetation. So where are we looking at shoreline stabilization? On the bay side of the terminal, both under the wharves, as well as north, south, and in between. Similar design for under the wharves and outside. We'll have similar environmental wave energy conditions, for example, that we're designing to, but there might be slight variations under the wharves. Next slide. So now on slide 3. So shoreline stabilization, how are we analyzing it? We start with geometric constraints. So what are our constraints on the uplands? What are our constraints in the water? What kind of space do we have? Typically, sort of the more space we have to work with, the more options we have to work with in terms of what kind of shoreline stabilization concepts and features we can include. And then we go towards looking at the environmental conditions, so wave energy, currents, etc., for selecting the type of materials and then sizing that material, especially if it is a riprap type of slope. So once we have sort of the our concept design based on the environmental conditions, the geometric constraints, we start looking at some other design considerations, such as sea level rise adaptation. So on this figure on the top right, for example, if you see, you can sort of see where it says riprap on the slope. This is an example section here. Up above where it says the engineered slope, that's where at present day we wouldn't maybe have wave action. So might not need to be a riprap slope, but that portion of the shoreline maybe can be some sort of engineered slope. Similar to the picture there in between the sections. But later on, if there is sea level rise, then the waves are now higher up and attacking the shoreline higher up, then maybe we can adapt later on, but we don't need to have that riprap there now. It's something we can adapt later. And then something sort of related to that is one of our current task items is to sort of take our riprap slope preventment concept and see where or is it possible to maybe have some greener measures in there. And I say where appropriate, because we still need to meet that purpose and need and understand that we're still designing for the amount of energy on the shoreline and our site constraints, but where we have that ability, that's sort of what we're looking at now to see if there's some other features we can incorporate into that design. On the bottom is an example of a bulkhead, a sheet pile wall, which we're not necessarily looking at broadly at this site, but there may be sort of a smaller, probably will be a smaller sort of cutoff type wall below the wharf, not to this scale, but it'll be sort of under the wharf, a shorter wall with the revetment slope below it. Next slide. So what are we doing in this phase? We're sort of, like I said, as we move from 15 to 30%, there's some refinements for us to make, and there's some updates for us to make based on like what Jeremy was talking about with updated site grading and adjustments to the dredge prism. That means we have to adjust our shoreline design, refining our understanding of what that material size needs to be, for example, for the riprap, based on updated wave modeling. So we have a design wave that we're looking at, and then we can size the rock based on that energy and considering the slope as well. Incorporating updated sea level rise estimates into the design. So we have an updated sea level rise rate for the project that we're incorporating into our design here. And then refining transitions. So in some cases, we might be transitioning from a riprap type of slope or onto a more sort of greener part of the site, such as the North Restoration site. And this picture down on the bottom right is an example of that kind of transition, where this is a called engineered slope. So it's an EnviroLock bags, where those are soil filled bags that we then plant, and those are, in this case, on this picture, were installed up above where the waves would be contacting the shoreline. Sort of a transition zone. Off to the right, it eventually transitions to an area of much lower wave energy where it is just a natural shoreline. So that's sort of what we have going on right now, and I'll leave it for questions.
Right. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions, comments from the board? All right, well, thank you for your presentations. Any questions or comments from the public on any of these presentations? Please step up.
Hi, my name is Robin Grace Stewart, and I'm from the Sierra Club. I'm the Marine Chair for our local Sierra Club. And I just wanted to make a comment that I really appreciate all the work that the board is doing to make this a green terminal. And it was really wonderful to listen to these presentations and all the considerations that went into this. Especially appreciate the use of landscaping for the stormwater control and the stabilization. Anyway, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Well, it sounded like they were all on the East Coast, so we should let them go. Thank you very much for their presentations, very informative.
Thank you. And so next month, we've got speakers on site contamination evaluations, roadway access, and anticipated traffic volumes.
Anticipated traffic volume sounds pretty interesting. All right, they all do. No. Moving on, onto new business, 11A, consider adopting resolution number 2025-02, a resolution establishing findings relative to permit 2025-01, a CEQA exemption and conditional approval of a permit 2025-01 for Sequoia Investments Fairhaven Terminal Dock Repair Project.
Thanks. I'll give a brief presentation and then take questions. And then we do have a project representative here too, if there are specific questions. So the project is just maintenance and repair, replacement of damaged piles at the Fairhaven dock. Proposes to replace up to 48 piles, which is approximately 6% of the existing 408 deck piles and 3% of the existing trestle piles. The existing damaged timber piles will be replaced with steel piles of the same diameter. And the existing piles will be removed. The intent is to remove them completely. The work will occur between the work window, July 1st to October 15th, over a 5-year period, just to allow some scheduling flexibility. So here is where the Fairhaven Terminal Dock is, for those of you that don't know. In Fairhaven, it is just south of the Hog Island Dock, which the permit was issued a few years ago for a very similar project. And so all the work will be staged from and conducted from a barge, only using vibratory methods for both the pile installation and the removal. It's all outside of mapped eelgrass and will stay more than 5 meters outside of mapped eelgrass. BMPs will be implemented to minimize turbidity, capture and remove debris, and contain and dispose of all the removed piles. And the project is consistent with Humboldt Bay Management Plan policies and goals related just to long-term maintenance of harbor-related infrastructure. This figure is hard to see, but it is identifying kind of where the piles that to be replaced are. So most of them are on the main dock part. There's a few on the trestle and just a few on the dolphins. So as part of the application process, the board accepted this permit for filing back in April. Notices were sent to the tribes, to agencies, posted on the district web page, and it was posted in the newspaper. We didn't receive any comments. And the resolution and permit with conditions and the notice of exemption, CEQA class 1 and 2 for existing facilities and repair and maintenance are all in your packet. And the application materials have been posted on the website since it was accepted for filing. And so staff recommends adopting the resolution and approving the permit with conditions.
I move to adopt resolution 2025-202.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have something to say. I think it's incredible they're investing money in the stock, and I salute them. Good for them. It's a nice stock in the bay. It's the most, certainly the best stock in the bay. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll get there one of these days.
There, I've seen our docs.
It's just nice to see them putting money into the stocks, and that's hopeful. So glad to see that happen.
I just have one question, which may not make much sense, but is there any mitigation value into removing the old wood timbers? I'm assuming they're creosote. And is anyone able to capture that mitigation value for anything? I see you, son.
You want the long answer or the short answer?
Short.
I'll take no. Greg wants the short answer. All right. Maybe I'll follow up with you offline. Any questions from the public or comments from the public? Seeing none, again, thank you. I appreciate that this project is happening, and maintaining facilities is always a good thing. So this is, do we need a roll call on this? So, and can we take the roll call on both portions of the motion at the same time? Yeah. I don't see why
As
not.
long as it's read together, yes.
Yeah, the motion was made for both, so yeah. Take a roll call vote, please.
Absolutely. Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dale,
Aye.
President Coleman.
Yes. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Welcome. And the next item too.
Next item, okay, so consider adopting resolution 2025-03, establishing findings relative to Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District Permit 2025-03, a CEQA exemption and approval of Harbor District Permit 2025-03 with conditions for the Long Pond Tidal Wetland Enhancement Project.
Great. So similar, I believe we have someone on Zoom, a project representative, in case there are specific questions too. But this project is part of the Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge. The applicant is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's in South Humboldt Bay, Salmon Creek unit, and I do have a location map that will come up in a minute. The Long Pond Tide Gate is a critical infrastructure for the refuge. It's what was equipped with one-way tide gates to prevent seawater from inundating refuge properties, and also allowed for stormwater to evacuate the properties. The tide gate did reach a point of failure after several attempts to repair it, and measures were taken last year in 2024 to prevent a catastrophic failure. So they did chain the tide gate shut and placed some dirt and backfilled the area to stabilize the levee. So the first phase of the project will repair and replace, will completely remove and replace the tide gate. And the second phase of the project is the restoration project. And so it is located down South Bay. Long Pond is one of the ponds down in the refuge. And the first phase, as I said, will remove the failing tide gate structure and replace it with a dimensionally equivalent structure, approximately 1,500 square feet. And to facilitate in-water construction, a coffer dam will be installed around the tide gate just so they can do all the work outside of the water, not in the water. And then the current structure will be completely removed and replaced with sheet pile, wall, and 3 culvert structures. And the new tide gate will have 2 that are kind of side opening and 1 that's top hinged. And it will allow for adaptive tidal flow management by refuge staff. We'll be able to make adjustments on the tide gate. Phase 1 is proposed to take place this year. And then the restoration work will take place in the next 2 years, 26 and 27. So that's just a picture of the tide gate, proposed tide gate replacement. And then moving on into phase 2, the habitat restoration of approximately 2.8 acres of existing upland habitat adjacent to Long Pond. Will be converted back into functional brackish and salt marsh wetlands. It will involve excavation of the tidal channels and ponds to improve hydrologic connectivity, expand floodplain function, increase habitat diversity. Large woody debris, such as stumps and logs sourced from within the refuge, will be placed strategically throughout and secured to provide habitat structure and perching sites for birds and sediment stabilization. So there is the site plan for the restoration project. The tide gate kind of on the top left of that figure. And here's some existing site photos. Long Pond, the bottom left is the tide gate structure, and then the bottom right is the upland restoration site within the Long Pond area. I kind of highlighted some of these earlier, but the restoration project will improve hydrologic connectivity, increase biodiversity, and best management practices will be incorporated into the construction operation and ongoing management of the site. Similar to the project I just talked about, the board did accept this application for filing in May. Notices were sent out and published on the district's webpage. And there were also, I participated in a couple of regulatory agency meetings over the past few months as the project was refined and updates were made. And we did receive one response from the Wiyot tribe requesting for a tribal monitor to be present during ground disturbing activities. So that has been added as a condition of approval to this permit. And that's my presentation. And staff is recommending approval with the conditions.
Great, thank you. So.
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions?
I have a couple questions, Vanessa. So the habitat restoration project, is there any monitoring activities that go along with that, or is it just they're just going to do it and hope for the best?
I mean, they monitor it as part of the refuge, overall refuge monitoring, but there's not a specific monitoring plan for.
How do we know that it's going to have any effect on the species?
Well, it is opening up and allowing for that tidal connection. So I guess it's it's assumed with some biological knowledge that by doing that, it will allow fish and other species to move back and forth from Hookton Slough Channel into this area. And then also it is creating salt marsh habitat. So by creating salt marsh habitat, that does increase biodiversity within the area.
Certainly, it's one of the habitats that we
Yeah.
desperately need
Yeah.
around Humboldt Bay. I'm just curious, none of the agencies asked for monitoring?
Not that I'm aware of. Ryan, if you're on the call or have anything to add, you're welcome to it. I don't know if Ryan.
Okay, I'm Ryan Eldridge with Water Civil and Environmental. We're a contractor with Fish and Wildlife Service, and yeah, part of the requirements of the project for the biological assessments and the biological opinions on it is that there will be monitoring on it, and so there will be monitoring and reporting to both U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Endangered Species Division, and NOAA NIMS. On the project to keep them updated and on the restoration effort and how it's going over time.
Is there a chance that we could be included in that correspondence?
Yes. Yeah. That's so Jason Storley, who's also online. He's the refuge manager. Yeah, it will be. You can make it a condition that we also just supply you with the same reports that we're supplying to NOAA and NIMS, or NOAA and Fish and Wildlife Service.
The species I think I'm most concerned about is longfin smelt and coho. This has potential to affect both of those species. So,
correct.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
And Jason has his hand up. He can speak more to it about the refuges side.
Hi, everybody. I'm the deputy project leader here at Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And so I did want to mention that we had a graduate student out here last year conducting a fish sampling project in Long Pond. And so she was essentially looking at prey base for river otters out here. And so I did want to mention that the species of concern, longfin smelt, as well as salmonids, were not detected during her trapping, during her sampling. But based upon the efforts that we're going to put forth, we're hoping that that the habitat restoration efforts will be a benefit to such species in the future.
So that's almost like a before after. So we should see some improvement in that, right?
Hopefully that will be the case. Correct. Yeah. So we'll have channeling throughout the restoration site, as well as a couple ponds that are constructed that will be connected to Long Pond. And then, as was mentioned, large woody debris, logs, and such placed throughout the entire site.
Thanks, Jason.
You bet.
Are you gonna modify your motion to include that as a condition?
Absolutely.
I'll second that.
Okay, so after comment, I'll clarify that with you because we'll need to reread it.
Okay. Any comments from the public? All right, seeing none, so the motion, as I understand, is the staff's recommendation with the additional condition of adding the Harbor District to the list of recipients of monitoring reports.
Thank you.
Is that a condition of the permit, or is that a voluntary agreement between the applicant and the district? Just want to clarify.
I'd like to see it as a condition of the permit.
Okay, so will you please read, Commissioner Newman, will you please
apologize to Aaron.
11B and add the condition?
The condition being, we're going to add.
So you're moving.
I move that we accept the resolution. Adopt resolution. Back to resolution, sorry. 503.
I don't have legal counsel here, so I want to make sure we cover.
RB
2503.
Consider adopting resolution 2503, establishing findings relative to Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District permit 2025-03, a CEQA exemption, and approval of Harbor District Permit 2025-03 with the conditions for Long Pond Tidal Wetland Enhancement Project.
And as a condition of approval,
And as a condition of approval, the monitoring be shared with the district.
Okay.
As it is conducted by the refuge.
perfect, thank you. Sorry, we don't have legal counsel here.
No, that's okay.
Thanks that we're covering our bases.
Yeah, thank you.
For the benefit of the applicant.
And then I guess, so the second is still a second?
Still a second.
All right, then I guess we have to have a roll call vote on this one as well.
Commissioner Dale,
Yes, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
and Commissioner Coleman, or President Coleman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Newman.
Aye. All right, thank you. So it passes
Thank you for doing
unanimously.
Extra effort to make sure we have that right.
That's good. That's Commissioner Dale causing problems again.
No, I want Vanessa to say a comment. Thank you, Vanessa. You are free to go.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. I hope for the success of this project. It seems like a good project.
Yeah.
Could have probably just read the reports on their webpage or something.
I bet they're not on their webpage. You find them for me. and I'll read them.
All right, moving on to item C, accept the audit report for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
All right, that time of year again. We saved the best for last. Hope everybody doesn't fall asleep. So I guess I wanted to do a really high level, it's 52-page audit report. I don't want to put everybody to sleep, but I do want to highlight some of the hard work that goes into it. You know, a big part of it is Mindy and myself put together the work papers that then Harshwell and Company does the audit. And it's both a financial and a governmental compliance audit. And I'm happy to report that it was an unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean opinion. There were no findings, there were no internal control issues, no compliance issues. For us, that's a big point of pride that we work really hard to provide as much, detailed work papers and umpteen statements and all the stuff that Mindy has to do along with mine. So that's our big picture takeaway. And then, as far as the order of things go, the MD&A is pages 4 to 10, and that's management, Chris, Mindy, and myself put together the analysis of the comparative info. One thing I like to highlight on that is the budget, and that's on page 8. Basically I like to show that we are still a positive net change of position of 260,000. There were some differences with the final budget compared to actual, but the main ones were dredging, which was 3.6 million. That wound up being capitalized as a fixed asset and not as an expense. So that kind of skews our budget to actuals. And then a big difference in the 23-24 fiscal year was kind of implementing a suggestion from the auditor from the prior year that was to be more proactive throughout the year with evaluating our receivables and choosing, to analyze stale AR and when to write them off. And so in the 23-24 year, we wrote off bad debts of almost 300,000. That was many years old that needed to go. So it's kind of like it was a one-time, thing that we needed to do to be able to move on from that. But I think going forward, we're looking at that on an ongoing monthly basis and able to feel that it's, a more of an accurate, up-to-date information. Page 11 is the statement of net position. It shows the ending cash at 6/30/24 was 4.2 million, and our capital assets, which were the fixed assets, were at almost 13 million. Again, that was a 3.5 million increase from the prior year. The big portion of that was the dredging. And another component of a big change in this current 23-24 year was the termination of the New Market tax credit and the ground leases with the Humboldt Bay Development Association. So the accounting side of that, to get it off of their books and off of ours, wound up that it was an increase there for the 2.3 million. And that also corresponded with the change in the liabilities. There was a decrease in our liabilities of 3.4 million because of the same New Market tax credit termination. The statement of revenues and expenses is page 13. Again, I think most things were consistent with the prior year, like I said, except that big change in the bad debts. And it looked like there was also an increase in utilities of over 80,000. That was something that I noted. And then the notes go in, basically go into great detail on all of our accounting policies, the changes in capital assets and debt, pensions, post-employment benefits, all kinds of information on that. And then to wrap up the report at the end is the report on the internal control and compliance. And again, saying that there were no findings and no compliance issues. So that's my very quick spin through the audit report. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
One thing I want to add is last year we received direction from the board when we adopted the June 30, 23 audit that we put special focus on the collections and the management of receivables. I want to ensure Lindsay commented on it. We took the write-off of some of that debt was over 10 years old. And the bigger part of that is that each and every month, Mindy, myself, and Lindsay go through, and it happens in the office, and we consult with Lindsay on write-offs, but we go through the receivable and take immediate action to communicate with tenants, collect rents. It's been a remarkable difference. You'll see as we enter into the budget that our late fees that we're collecting, our bad debt write-off, we're improving in that area. Meaning we have more late fee income than we have write-off. Prior to now, that wasn't the case. We had these late fees, we never wrote the debt off. But if you look at it perpetually over a series of years, we were in the opposite position where we are now. So we took the direction. That was an immediate improvement over the prior methods that were used by the district and show. So just to further that comment a little bit, that direction was indeed implemented as recommended by the auditor.
So I got a question. Is there on the account and grant receivables, it's got 1.3 million there? Is that what you're talking about? Or accounting for, as we're paying for consultants and whatnot through, I imagine through this heavy lift offshore wind terminal grant or through the, I forgot the name of the grant, for that federal grant. But is that where you're recording the receivables as when we pay bills or recognize the invoices coming in that work has been done? And is it being placed there?
Yes and no. I would say for the most part, yes. As the certain deliverables are completed, then they can invoice for them and the ongoing part. The Spartina project has gotten kind of advances that we put that in the deferred income. And then as we're able to move it to as the deliverables are completed, then we recognize the income and move on.
Well, I guess the other part is that, are we going to get into a point where will the district get into a point where we're short on cash and long on accounts payable?
We'll look at that in the budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I move that we accept the audit report for 23-24 fiscal year.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Had some questions. Any comments or questions from the public? Oh, again, thank you very much for the hard work on keeping our book straight. Let's see, I guess we can just take a regular vote on this one. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining?
And congratulations on
Yeah.
playing on it here.
Clean audit. Ooh.
And now it's almost fiscal year end again.
Yeah, right back to work.
Thank you, Lindsay.
All right, and sticking in the financial realm, consideration of the initial fiscal year 2025-2026 budget preparation, step 3, preliminary goals for port operations, conservation and recreation programs, administrative services, and general operating and staffing.
So this is a quick slide. This is the last step of that piece. Keep in mind that administrative fees, costs, and payroll are included in the preliminary budget. So we won't have slides specific to those. They'll be included in the next business item, which is preliminary budget. So there are a few items here that are being proposed. Port navigation. This is a $5,000 allotment to allow us to go out and do studies to secure how we can outfit a district vessel with survey equipment. One of the biggest challenges we have in the Port of Humboldt Bay is we don't have a local survey vessel. We don't have the appropriate equipment to do so. For many years, and much to the dismay of the Army Corps of Engineers, local folks, including bar pilots and private contractors, were boarding dredge vessels to be part of the surveying. That was a past practice for many years. It had been found to be acceptable. When the Army Corps of Engineers found out about it, as you'll recall, last year we received a letter saying that there was a cease and desist that was not to occur, and that they needed the district's help in doing that. The discussion that we've had mainly with our chief exporter, Green Diamond, is can we find out some sort of a program where we can get the appropriate survey equipment, we can get people trained, and we would use the district vessels such as the Port Authority boat. So we need to get a little technical assistance. We need to, number one, understand what we need, understand what the costs are, how we outfit the vessel, and then what the training would be to put together a true budget. And we could either search for a grant, or we could possibly do an assessment in the water where the terminal operators here pay collectively to have it. That way we can make sure that we're able to survey. We need to have a certified survey. And the reason for that is when ships come into the Port of Humboldt Bay, we're trying to get ship nominations because we frequently have draft restrictions, and because we are a very serious entrance. Many of these ship companies want a certification or a recent survey as part of the ship nomination process. So it's been a challenge. So I want the port to take the active role to begin the studies and to find out what we need, where we need to get it, what the costs are to be able to go after it. The conservation, the SAVE grant, is the $30,000 we were awarded to the state of California for the surrendered and abandoned vessels exchange program. The conservation and planning dollars that are there at $7,500, that is for us to do some continued programs. You'll see there's an additional item there of $5,000. So we do a lot of land management. Mainly we do trash removal, vehicle abatement, vessel abatement. We participate with the Peninsula Community Services District, with the Peninsula Community Collaborative, and with the Small Volunteer Fire Department, many activities. Most of that is rebuilding fences, removing trash, heavy debris. The $7,500 is for us to have some matching funds and go after a conservation grant. There's a couple that are coming up, and we need a little bit of technical assistance on that, and we're gonna need some matching funds at about 20%. More to come once those grant programs open. They're not currently open. We've just got awareness of some opportunities. Then recreation, $5,000. We're looking to make some enhancements here to the docks themselves, as well as we're going to be participating on an Eagle Scout project for a life vest exchange. We're looking at some temporary enhancements to our kayak storage here, better signage around the area, and it was recommended to us to consider some other things in terms of the Embarcadero, including a fitness loop around the island. I'm not saying we're going to do those things, but I want to make sure we budget.
For what?
A fitness loop.
What's that?
It's where you walk around, but there are stations where you can stop and you can do a pull up or a push up, or you'll do stretching. It's just interactive activity for people walking around the island.
For fishermen.
The people that work on the island, our staff, the NOAA staff and the water resources staff, we all put in a lot of miles around the island each day. So
you can do push up now every time you stop.
You got it. So just starting to have some initial funding for us to get a little bit of help A lot of this can be done by staff, but we also are running real thin on staff around here, so. Anyways, those are the projections in that area, so I just want to present that as an information only item. We'll be getting to the budget in just a second. Any questions on that?
I make a motion to adopt the preliminary budget for the fiscal year 25-26.
I think with what we just heard, that was an informational, and we're getting to the budget, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess we can take that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and second for the preliminary budget,
I appreciate that you all have reviewed the budget and you're in support of it, and I'm ready to move forward. So just to clear, we're moving on from 11
yeah, so,
to 11E.
yeah, so we received the report.
Perfect. I'm on track with you, no problem at all.
I asked questions about the pole barn.
I'm good. I like where Jackson.
Although I guess, I mean, I should go out and make sure that there's no public comment on item D, the consideration of initial fiscal year budget prep step 3. All right, so let's move on to the actual budget adoption.
Maybe no one online. Okay. Okay. So you have a staff report before you that gives some key highlights. I won't go through each and every one of them. But you know, we are continuing to work within our budget amounts. As Lindsay reported, there are events that happen such as dredging. Keep in mind those exceed the budget, but once they are capitalized and put into depreciate, we get back within budgeted volumes. The preliminary budget is balanced this year if we defer certain capital projects as proposed, which I'll share with you in a minute. Rental income on the Humboldt Peninsula is down for the last 2 years due to tenant turnover. We are having some leasing activities. We're currently expanding an additional tenant by a couple of acres that will go out tomorrow. We're seeing a lot of legal expenses and other professional expenses that are non-reimbursable in the development project we're working on, including Nordic and the heavy lift marine terminal. Bulk of those are in the terminal. That's real estate support that we need to have, as well as some additional professional support. Dredging is covered in there. Special note, we do have our pending FEMA application from event DR 4683A, which would provide between $2.5 to $3.1, I believe it is, $1 million to reimburse us for the dredging that's been done to date. Or we could pay down a portion of that and allocate some of those funds for dredging. Keep in mind the first step there will be pay back the district cash on hand that was used to supplement the lack of funds necessary at the time of dredging despite borrowing. I think the other things are really work in progress from the past year. Spartina, the heavy lift marine terminal, the Fields Landing Boatyard is more than we thought in terms of the stormwater system, but we're at that point now, so we're moving forward. We have a raise this year for our collective bargaining unit that was determined back in 23. So July 1 will be $1.50. Is that correct? Maybe $1.50 an hour? $1.25. Thank you. Increase. So we budgeted for that. And then we continue to adjust our staffing needs. As you know, we had a grants and contracts analyst position close this past Monday, which we'll be moving forward on the coming week. So these are just a few of the highlights. Happy to discuss it in any kind of detail. Next, you'll see the preliminary budget. Just for simple view, it's broken out in a blue, kind of a pink, and a green. Green means go, right? In the end of the day, this budget has been established by making key adjustments in the categories that we know we're going to have major increases or decreases in. It is adjusted for the amount of grant revenue that would come in, minus the expense, giving consideration to any income that we receive through administrative fees or staff time. Overall, in the general expense categories that we know are stable year over year, we've added 3% for the purposes of CPI. And overall, we have an estimated total income next year of $10,238,000. Expenses at $8 million. I get the number off the top of my head, isn't it? Like 8 million or 9.5 million, sorry, 9,485, leaving us with about $754,000 in net income. So with that said, we've got a bit of a conundrum on our hands. Suddenly I'm not advancing. Maybe you could advance me, Mindy.
This isn't an advance.
Oh, sorry. We'll go back to the PowerPoint then. So again, we have an estimated income, just in excess of $10 million, estimated expense at about 9.5 million. So we have an estimated net income of $755,000. Out of that, our principal debt reduction comes. So interest is above the line, principal pay down is below the line. You don't typically see principal pay down in an income statement because it is applied to the balance sheet, not to the income statement. But our scheduled principal debt reduction will be $544,000 next year. So you can see we do not have enough cash. We could not pay our debt and then do the proposed capital projects that have been proposed. So we're going to have to make some very difficult choices. Here's some budget options. We could do capital project deferrals. The problem is that brings long-term loss. It brings long-term debt. We have used this method for many, many years at the Harbor District. I've been quite outspoken on it, especially given my background and managing facilities for so long. We're gonna have to really examine and do incremental projects. That'll be part of the method on that. Why are we doing that? Well, we're doing big development projects that we can't afford to do. And it's not a criticism to us. It's a harsh reality of where we're at. And so we're going to have to really focus on our enterprise operation as our primary method of spending and investment, and come up with other ways to sell our development projects, including pushing on our grant partners. We could do a leasing campaign that could have some short-term effects, and it could have some long-term effects. Get some immediate cash coming through the district. And if we negotiated the right kind of leases, we could get some long-term occupancy and tenancy with increases. That's certainly something we want to look up. We could increase our fee portion. So right now, as an example, you could look at the amount that we're paying for waste refuge, water, sewer, power, and you can see what we're recovering in the surcharges. I made the recommendation last year, much to the disliking of one of our commissioners, that we need to start charging at Woodley Island Marina for the power and water that's being consumed. It is one of the largest areas that we could support our district. Challenge is, it's tough for fishermen. They have their own challenges, and I respect.
We do charge.
It's not proportionate though to what we're spending. We know we have antiquated meters that aren't giving us accurate readings. And so we really need to look at how we would do that. A pro rata share would be the better way to look at that. We don't charge for trash right now. Our trash costs are exorbitant. The bulk of the trash that we have here comes off the docks. The other tenants here have their own trash, with the exception of the Army Corps and ourselves, which we share, but fortunately we don't share that much trash. Not picking on fisheries. I'm just simply saying that we have operations that have expenses that exceed the kind of revenues that are coming into the district. So I'm not making the recommendation now. I'm giving examples of what we could do. We could increase our fees, forklifting fees, offloading fees, etc. All of our leases at the island are long-term, with the exception of one. There's not a lot of ability there, but those are all options that we could do. There are other opportunities marinas do. We could revisit putting a trailer park at the marina short-term. We could look at some sort of concession sales. So these are all opportunities to create sales and revenues for the district. You know, there are a lot of reimbursable expenses that we have. I think I've talked that one to death, but it's something we're going to have to look at very closely. We could slow down our long-range projects. But we have grant requirements that probably don't allow that, because we don't want to lose compliance with our grants, because we are very, very healthy with grants. The challenge is most of these projects require the cash come from the district, and then we get reimbursed. And there's been challenges there, both with our ability on that, as well as the rate of reimbursement and the time of reimbursement, and some of our procurement not qualifying for reimbursement. We could do refunding of existing debt. We have some long-term debt, a BBVA loan that was taken out to create cash when we got in the new market tax credit world for our portion of the investment, as well as a refunding bond, which are coming up pretty soon. 28, 29, 30 is the area. They don't all time out the same way. They're on parity with other debts, such as the debt we took on in 2023. But we probably are going to be in a borrowing cycle where we have to bring on new debt and refund those. rather than just exhausting them. And we'll do the appropriate analysis to see what that looks like. And then others to be determined. There are ideas that we may not have yet thought of. So the recommendation of staff is that you adopt the preliminary budget as written. If there are changes you'd like to see or recommendations like you made, the request is that you would approve it. You direct staff to work with the Budget Advisory Committee, which is Commissioner Norton and Commissioner Benson, and that we would examine this deeper and bring it back to the final budget. I can tell you that Lindsay, Mindy, and myself will be working extensively to see what kind of opportunities are out there. But given this previous slide that I shared with you, we've got some really tough decisions to make. And it's not surprising. We're not the only governmental agency, the only business, only folks right now that are facing, lower revenues with much higher costs than ever. So I'm going to put a smile on my face and be grateful that we're going to create $755,000 in revenue. And we're going to manage this thing really, really tight like we've done. We have a staff that performs a lot of the things that we would have to farm out otherwise. But if you see the roughly $100,000, $110,000 we spent in repairs and maintenance last year, we've cut it as low as we can cut it. We don't have a lot of places to go.
What are your proposed capital projects that you would consider?
Sure. So
delaying?
so we brought through a series of projects.
Okay.
Some of the large capital things that we have to do that we just don't have an option on are the marine outfall line and pushing that forward to get our marine outfall line secured. The stormwater system at Fields Landing Boatyard that's been pushed off for a very long time, and it's taking longer because it's become a bigger design than we anticipated. Those two together, $350,000. So we could go through the whole list, but 350 minus that, there's $80,000 that we've got to spend, and we don't have it. Which means that we're strapping our cash flow because we're paying these things through cash flow because we're running through the fiscal years where we have peaks in revenues. Maybe we collect old debt or we get a large payment related to our project. So those are the kind of things we have to look at. And I'm not trying to hide anything, but we really are going to have to make some hard decisions about our long-term vision and what we are supporting of and what we're not, because this is the harsh reality of the finances of the district. And it's no different across the street. I know our county is going through this and a lot of other agencies are. I was with a couple of agency leaders this weekend and we were all talking about our budgets, right? The good news is we all know there's opportunities to increase revenues. We can't save our way to a profit. We can only sell our way to a profit. So we're going to have to really get creative and look at programs we can get into and opportunities we can have to create additional revenues. And that I hope that will be the outcome of this and the focus of this, not to cut things, but there's a harsh reality facing us right there. And this isn't new news. We've seen this coming. So
What's happened before?
Happy to talk through this, happy to talk questions. We're actively looking at financing options and refinancing options, trying to be very proactive to bring solutions to the board for consideration. And, we'll work with the advisory committee. Happy to meet with any one of you individually offline. If you have specific questions, happy to meet here and talk about it collectively.
The cost of borrowing is going to be, doesn't look so good right now. It's getting worse than, and the outstanding debt you already have is, I think it was 5.9%, wasn't it? So that's not, but years ago, you'd think that would be a bad rate. Now you're thinking, oh, that's a great rate.
We have rates down into the fours. The good news is municipal debt is quite a bit less. You're right, Jack. Debts are expensive right now. And that's the concern we have are we looking at conventional debt or short-term debt like secured lines of credit, which, as you just pointed out, are very, very costly. And we have to consider is that the appropriate use of public funds. But there's municipal debt, it's at a much lower rate. And so it's a great point you bring up. And obviously we're looking for that municipal debt, but it's hard and everybody's going after it right now. So there's limited buckets. There's a line that we've been looking at recently that there's just no capacity in the line.
Right.
So they have to ask for more money. That money is going to be at price much higher than what they originally were going to quote. So again, to what you said, money's getting expensive. So, but I do agree with you. Maybe one of those rates that we thought was high might not be so high any longer.
We sell the marina.
I'm gonna sell the dredge.
Sell that bad boy.
Empire boat.
Just don't raise the rates on the fishermen.
It's been a while since we did it.
Been a while since a lot of fishermen. made
So
it.
when is the date that we have to have it all finalized?
August 1st, the board has to, we have to transmit it to the board of supervisors, so we have a meeting on, is it July 10th this month? Yeah, this coming month, I believe it's the 10th. And ultimately, we'd like to adopt it at that meeting. Commissioner Coleman is out of town and he's looking for us to work with him, his calendar. Right now, we're on par to bring the final budget July 10, but we've got some work to do. And we can call special meetings if need be. It's not as if it has to all happen at once, but I think we're all, trying to get things done in regular calendars because there's a lot of demands on everyone's time, commissioners, public staff. But we want to be.
Was it a question you had, Aaron?
Oh, just a comment. I was wondering if any of the disaster funding programs that have come out for fisheries disasters have been available to any of the marinas.
It's an excellent question. We actually asked and we're told that we don't qualify for it.
Because we're in California.
Maybe now. Let me give you a quick little example. We applied for FEMA funding in December of 2022. Well, that was the disaster of January. We put in our application. We have carried the costs to get there. Mike has given time from his staff's hours to be cooperative. We've traveled many times, SHN, the district, down to Shelter Cove for meetings with FEMA. But here we are in 2025 and we still don't have funds. I don't have the journal in front of me, but we've easily spent $100,000 chasing money. And we're about to get $654,000, which probably doesn't get the job done. It gets part of the job done. And it's very hard to attract a contractor to a remote area to do a small job or to do part of a job. Then they have to mow and demow. So this is the kind of climate that we're in. We also have grants that we're working with right now that are derelict in reimbursing. They take 5 months to reimburse. And it's nothing other than just a climate that we're in. And sometimes we have to put out volumes of cash that we don't have. That's not budget, it's cash flow. So, but all of this over time puts great strain, and not only on the finances of the district, but on the staff that's managing it. It's very difficult sometimes to just, constantly be in that hole. So we're looking for ways to really look at revenue increase, to not dwell on this, not live in it. But have honest conversations. But to answer some of those questions, that's why we have to increase revenue. We can't cut things any lower. As hard as it is to do, we've got to create revenue.
In the past, Chris, we met that deficit with reserves. Where's our reserves at?
We're not there. The reserves that we have right now would create a portion of the cash flow necessary to continue with the heavy lift marine terminal. And we still may need to secure a line of credit in order to do that. And we have to keep sufficient reserves. So the question you asked, by your policy, we have to have 80% of our expenses on reserve. So doing a little bit of quick math there, you can see that the amount that we're going to have estimated net income does not meet that reserve. But we have county treasurer, we have other funds on hand for projects. So Lindsay is going to work on her cash flow analysis. Mindy is preparing a cash statement, including our free funds and our segregated funds. We'll test it for our cash to cash ratio for our debt covenants. We'll test it for our debt service or debt coverage ratio for our debt covenants, and we'll test it for our reserves. That's part of the bigger budget process, part of what we'll be working on in the coming days as we apply the preliminary budget. Those are some of the levers we have to slide to figure out where we have to give and not. What we do know is we have to pay our debt. We have a perfect credit rating, we want to maintain it, so we're certainly not going to try to defer debt. I think debt modification would be the last thing we would look at. That would be if we were in a couldn't refinance or couldn't borrow scenario. But based on the performance of the district, the fact that we're still growing, we should be able to use debt as a tool if we need to. But it has to be done responsibly.
And you brought up the trailer park, which was, you know, an idea from a number of years ago. Are there any other creative new revenue generating ideas that the district could pursue with the properties that we have?
I think that's what we're looking at, is what are the opportunities we have out there? But keep in mind, we also need to be able to do this without increasing costs. And
Yeah, I
having an
know,
offset,
building something.
you know. One of the things the district did a few years back, and it has its own set of challenges with it, but as we decided we weren't gonna operate Shelter Cove any longer. That saved the district a considerable sum of money. We now pay a fee to the Shelter Cove Fishermen's Preservation to provide a lot of the services that we once did down there. That could come back to us. We do have a responsibility down there right now that seems to be working well. I have staff going down next week to assess current conditions. And to do some of the general maintenance we're responsible for. In 2019, we began negotiations, and in 2021, we leased the Fields Landing Boatyard to a local vendor. And even though we still apply money to Fields Landing Boatyard and the equipment, we went from $100,000 a year expense down there and dropped it down significantly, less than half. So there are things that we have done in our facilities to decrease expenses or enhance revenues. And I think we need to continue to examine those. And so we do have free land. One idea is we'd have to get a conditional use or an interim use permit, but we have acres of land out at RMT2. Maybe we should get in warehouses, maybe we should get some kind of a storage business. But that takes a lot of management, and you have to control hours, because we can't just let people in our assets 24 hours a day. We don't have the resources to create the demise necessary, the alarm and access controls necessary. But that might be one way to create a bit of revenue. The challenge is we have competition. We have Brainerd, we have Caverns of Downtown Warehouse here in Eureka. We have people that are in the storage and self-storage business that we then become competitors with. But that is an area that's part of the leasing that I put up there. It's in this slide here is a leasing campaign. And, you know, really looking at that. There are other ideas, but I don't want to get too creative right now in the moment. But
Yeah,
you know, there definitely is opportunity there. It'll take time. But yeah, I think that's something, Stephen, we should look at very, very closely. So, and I'm also talking with CSDA. I've talked to other ports and marinas. Every marina has a trailer park. Obviously, that's a long-term thing for us. We're the one that doesn't, and we all know that that was a controversial issue, probably different place and time. I'm not suggesting that that's the answer this year, but I think those are the kind of things we should be looking at, is really taking advantage of the real estate we have. Not building more things we can't afford to maintain and manage.
so put the trailer park at RMT1.
Maybe.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board or the public?
I think it'll be fun to work on this for what it's worth. That's a nice puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
I've seen worse.
Gives you something to do. It's more interesting than the
Gives you something
frost
to do.
Yeah.
Tomato, tomato. No, I'm just kidding. I like the term RV as well. Thank you, Mindy.
RV. Well, it's like the night.
Okay, so
All right.
I need a motion and a.
Did we? Yeah, we had the motion before the presentation started, so, and I think we had a second, so we have a motion and a second.
Procedurally, we should make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to adopt the preliminary budget.
And Aaron, you second it?
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstain?
Thank you,
Passes.
everyone.
Item 12, adjournment.